Hello and welcome back to the week 4 of this course. If you remember, in the previous week we did discuss e-waste management and handling rules very briefly. I had a brief description of that. So I thought I'll kind of give you a slightly more detail on the e-waste management rule, because that's very important in terms of how the e-waste management system has to be installed in any country, and we are talking about in India. So we'll talk about the e-waste management rule in India in slightly more detail in this particular video, and then some other stuff we'll try to cover. So far, if you remember from the week 1, week 2, week 3, 3 weeks have been done. Week 1 we started with big overview, what is e-waste, how it is defined, how the definition changes in different places in the world, and some places certain things are included, other places it is excluded. So those discussions were there. What are the, why we are even talking about e-waste, what are the environmental implications, what are the health implications, we talked about that. And then we also looked at some of the individual chemicals which is present, why they are bad, what is the risk assessment, we talked about those kind of aspect. We did some calculations in terms of risk. We also did some calculations in terms of what is the future, how to predict how much e-waste will be produced, how to do those kind of predictions. And then we had spent last week, especially the week 3, we spent quite heavily on how to extract the precious metals from electronic waste. Before that, we also tried to quantify how much e-waste, different materials are present in e-waste, and we also try to quantify from a monetary point of view, like when e-waste is being disposed, say how much money we are also losing, because we are losing material. So any product, when they are disposed, we are losing a lot of material with it, and that material we have to mine, we have to process. So there is a cost associated with all that, and of course there is an environmental implication. So we try to quantify as well how much money can potentially be made if we recycle e-waste properly. And then we talked about what are the process required in terms of recovery of this precious metal from electronics to finally make it to bring it back as a pure metal. So from electronics, the process in general, if you look at, we looked at different processes, but in a very summarized form, we can say that the whole process, most of the process, in fact, the entire different process that we looked at, the basic philosophy was to get this precious metal from electronics to a liquid solution, and then again from that liquid solution concentrate it and make it to a pure form. So that's the whole process, and there were different aspects of like a biological process, bioabsorption, bioleaching, and then thiourea, cyanide, and there were several more which you already have seen it. Even the slides are available with you to look at too. So that's kind of how this whole things we try to cover the different aspect of it. Now in this particular week we will be again going back to some of those concepts which we have covered earlier, try to emphasize on that, and then we will also talk about some of the newer stuff in terms of a little bit more discussion on e-waste management rules, how the e-waste is managed say in other countries. We'll try to see an example from China, because that's like a booming economy. So it's actually as of today they have now they have in fact a little bit better environmental infrastructure as compared to what we have in India. So how China is doing it, they also are in a similar position, a lot of population, so a lot of electronic waste is supposed to be produced in future, projected to be in future. They are also getting a lot of e-waste coming from abroad. Until recently, so now there is some checks and balances are there. So similar situation, how they are managing it, what we can learn from them, and how we can do things is over here. So those discussion we'll try to have, and then another concept which this week we'll try to cover is the concept of this life cycle analysis. There is a separate course running on life cycle analysis. So some of you who are registered for both the courses, you may see some overlap, maybe a video or a video and a half overlap here and there. But there may be many students here who have not taken life cycle course. So, they will give you a very quick overview of what is an LCA and how it relates to environment e-waste. So, we will talk about that aspect. All that is that's kind of in a nutshell what will be there in this week. Just to give you a preface of this week. Then we are planning to have some maybe 1 or 2 extra videos where we'll have some of these problems being solved. There was some questions on the discussion forum recently where the students were asking for, they want to see some solved examples being done. We have done some solved examples on the slides, but it looks like you want some more. So, we will try to have a video or a video and a half, like maybe 40-45 minutes video or 2 videos of 30 minutes each, just dedicated on how to solve some of these problems using the concept that we have covered in this course. That will be helpful, especially helpful for all, but especially for those of you who are planning to register for the exam and other stuff, because in an exam you will have those kind of problems also showing up. So, we are planning to do that extra bit just to have to help you guys to do it better, and at the same time also there is a possibility of having a live session sometimes. We'll inform you about that as we make progress on that aspect too. So, being said all that, having a good overview of giving you the big picture for this week, let's look at individually what we are trying to cover here. So, we are looking at e-waste management and handling rules and guidelines first. So, let's and the goal for that is to better management of e-waste in the country. So, how we'll go over that? I'll quickly give you an introduction. What is the regulatory framework? What is the objective of e-waste draft rule? There was a draft rule and there was a final rule. So, we'll talk about both application of stakeholders. So, we'll talk about the draft rule and which is the newer rule, and also how it differs from 2011 rule. So, we will have most of the new rule is actually similar to 2011 rule. There are certain new some new things have been added, and then we will try to summarize with some slides. So, application of stakeholders, responsibilities, responsibility of the SPCB, responsibility of CPCB, guideline of implementation of e-waste, new additions in e-waste management and handling rules, what is the newer things which has come up. So, that is we are going to talk about. So, we already know that obsolete or unused electronics, electrical product, they are commonly known as e-waste or electronic waste. So, they are commonly known as e-waste or electronic waste. So, over of 1000 chemicals have been identified in the e-waste stream. So, more than 1000 chemicals are there in the e-waste stream, and so more than 1000 chemicals are there in the e-waste stream. So, these chemicals have the potential to disrupt the hormonal system, can adverse reproductive function, can cause certain types of cancer. So, the contamination of soil, surface water. So, all these things you have already seen, already discussed. So, we do not have to spend too much time on that. So, So, this is kind of why the rules are there. Any rule, whether you look at any particular rule, the rules are there for a particular purpose. So, this e-waste management and handling rules, which came out in 2011 and then the revision in 2016, it is its basic objective again is to put in place effective mechanism to regulate the generation, collection, storage, transport, import, export, and then environmental sound recycling, treatment and disposal of e-waste. So, basic philosophy for any of these rules is the same: to prevent human health impact, to prevent environmental health impact, to make the environment clean, to keep it clean, and then to promote recycling so that we can recover the materials from there, and that material can be used back. So, it becomes more like a circular economy concept rather than a linear economy. The entire world is gradually realizing that we have to move from this linear economy concept to the circular economy concept. And presently most of the stuff that we have is a linear economy. So, you have kind of things being mined, produced, and then they come to the market, you buy it, you dispose it, dumped, and then again new material, you follow the circle. Now, the circular economy concept is once it's end of life, coming out of the waste stream, you recover the material from there and then you put that material back into the system. So, that is your circle, that is why it is called circular economy. Right now, it is linear. So, it just goes one and then you put at the dump, goes to the dump sites or to the waste to energy plant. So, that is your linear economy, and people are realizing that with the population rise and the demand from different sectors, the cost of living, I would say the purchasing power going up around the world. So, that is in general. Of course, there are a lot of inequalities in the world, including in India. Unfortunately, we have we rank pretty high on inequality index. Some people are really very rich in India, but most of the people are very, very poor. So, that is and then there is a middle class, but the middle class, you call it low middle class, high middle class, whatever. But then there is quite a bit of, like, we have a substantial poor people in the country, and then that is So that they don't have much purchasing power, but our middle class and our middle class also is actually more than US population now. So that's why we have a lot of purchasing power and lots of markets. That's why it's an Indian market. That's what they are targeting for actually. And we want people from the lower strata to come to the middle income. So over the years, it has, and some progress have been made. Ideally, if we could have done more, we could have. It would be really great for anything this kind of stuff, but we are trying to make some progress in that area. So coming back, so this is based on that, since there is a lot of demand, a lot of waste will be produced. So then we need to have, when we try to collect it, we can refurbish it, there is a lot of recyclable market is also there, collection system. Then there is a concept of this producer responsibility, which we talked about in the previous video as well, one of the previous video, the extended producer responsibility EPR concept, and this is all like this is also there. Then the newer rule has almost the same as the previous. There are some modifications which will be talked about in like in this particular video. So in terms of e-waste rule, what is the whether it's 2016 or 2011, it's minimize illegal recycling, extended responsibility to produce e-waste, a take back program, channeling to registered dismantler, recycler, reduce the hazardous substance in electronic components. So try to use the material, we'll talk about that as well in that LCA exercise, that try to use a more environmental friendly material, environmental friendly chemicals. And then you regulate the generation, collection, storage, transportation, import, export and all that. So so in terms of this e-waste management rules 2011, there are 6 chapters, 3 schedules and 6 forms. The newer one actually has slightly more number of forms, which we have already seen in the previous video. And following procedures have been included, where you have to have authorization of producers, dismantlers, collection agencies. You have to register and renewal of recyclers. Producer is responsible for the entire life cycle for the own branded product. So the producer is responsible. So the producer is responsible for the entire life cycles of his own branded product, and in particular the environmental sound end of life management, facility collection and take back. So this is again what we were discussing in the previous video, that it's good to make them responsible, but at the same time we need to have some sort of mechanism to really have these producers behave responsibly. So we need to set up some sort of mechanism. We need to have dedicated recyclers or the collection centers, so which can collect all these waste. So liability of producers collection, this has been identified, reduction of hazardous substances, that is also called ROHS, that has been looked into too. So application of these rules apply to every producer, consumer, bulk consumer involved in manufacturing, sole purpose, the processing of electrical equipment, collection centers, dismantlers, recyclers, everybody is under this. They are all the stakeholders. Shall not apply to the batteries, because battery is a separate rule. Then shall not apply to micro and small enterprises, radioactive waste, as they have respective development act. So they have a different act which is out there. Responsibility, it's a producer has to collect the e-waste, setting up the collection center or a take back system. So it's as part of the extended producer responsibility, they have to kind of make sure the waste is collected, setting up the collection center, financing, organizing a system individually or joining a scheme. So that's what I was trying to say in the previous video, that it's better to have a scheme rather than everybody is trying to do individually, because it becomes so much of duplication of effort, and it doesn't remain financially viable to do that way. Then you have to have financial organization of a system, individually or joining a scheme, again providing contact details, creating awareness about hazards through publications, advertisements, posters, affix a visible legible symbol on the product to prevent e-waste from dumped in the regular waste. So those are some responsibility of the producer. They have to obtain an authorization of the State Pollution Control Board, they have to maintain the record, they have to file annual return. Then the collection center is again they have to get an authorization, they have to collect the e-waste in a secured manner and no damage during storage and transportation of e-waste. Then they have to file the annual return in Form 3 to SPCB and CPCB, maintain record of e-waste handled in Form 2. Then there are certain responsibilities of the consumers, consumer or bulk consumer. They have to make sure the e-waste is channelized to authorized collection center only, or registered dismantler or recyclers, or is returned to the pickup or take back service. Shall maintain record of e-waste generated in Form 2. Then the responsibility of dismantler is there, obtain authorization or registration, no damage is caused while doing storage and transportation. They have to do not have any adverse effect process that they use. According to the guideline, ensure that dismantled e-waste are segregated, non-recyclable, non-recoverable components sent to registered recycling facility for recovery of material. File a return of Form 3. Do not process any e-waste for recovery refinery unless he is registered with SPCB. Then recycler obtain authorization and registration, make available all records, file annual return in Form 3 to Pollution Control Board. Then State Pollution Control Board or the Pollution Control Committee, it's preparation of inventory, granting authorization, compliance, maintaining information, taking action and all that. Then you have Central Pollution Control Board, similar stuff, coordinate with the State Pollution Control Board, preparation of guidelines, documentation, compilation of data, recommendation of standards, training and awareness program, annual report, all that. So, in terms of implementation, guidance document has been prepared, which can be used for the implementation. This was for 2011. Similar guidance document, I think, is there for 2016 as well. So draft has been broadened. What is the changes in the scope in 2015 draft or 2016 rule? They have been broadened the scope of existing one by including several major provisions. Like earlier, there were some issues in terms of stakeholders. Now, the new draft rules have clarity. They lay down the responsibility of the various stakeholders in very clear terms, so you know who is responsible for what. They have incorporated some new like a refurbisher who repair, use electrical, and then dealers and producers responsibility organizations, PROs are included. Draft or the new rule also have refurbishers to channelize e-waste to a collection center. Dealers have been mandated to collect e-waste in a box or a bin. PROs can take the responsibility, which is the producer responsibility organizations can for collection and channelizing of e-waste from the end of life of their products. Let's see. Then they have. So these are the newer stuff added to that. Another new feature is the deposit refund scheme, which is a portion of the money, portion of the sell price will be retained by the producer and to be refunded to consumer once the end of life products are channelized according to the prescribed method. So basically, you pay a little bit extra. That's what I was telling you, that if you are in Canada, you pay nearly $36 to $40 extra for e-waste and e-waste disposal fee. Here the point is not a e-waste disposal fee, it's more like a deposit refund system. So you deposit certain money and then you will get the money back when you are going to dispose this electronic product and when you're trying to buy a newer product or something like that. Under this, a portion of the sale price shall be retained by the producers and be refundable to consumer once the end of life products are channelized according to the prescribed method. So that's so the new rules have simplified the formalities regarding authorization and signature, and it now asks producers to seek authorization for carrying out extended producer responsibility from SPCB in case they are implementing in a particular state, or CPCB if they have a plan India implementation. So there have been some I would say delegation of power, delegate power. EPR has been explained, and a note on hazardous substance is also there. Reduction of hazardous substance was to comply. Still, majority of electronics are non-compliant. Actually, have covered this point. So they can do a random sampling of e-waste, electronic and electrical product, and then see whether compliance with ROHS is there or not. There is a penalty provision now as well. Whoever fails to make the rule, like 1 lakh, then 25 lakh, and then the price will go up. These provisions in 2015 are as per existing rules of 2011. A stringent panel is there. More than 90% of e-waste is handled by the informal sector, but still the rule doesn't talk about that at all. So it doesn't say anything. It's essential to release long-term policy. So there are a lot of new stuff, new additions with a good, better management of the e-waste in the country. So if you can look at quickly some of the how different e-waste stuff is being used. So to this slide, it looks a little bit busy. So what we'll do, we'll go one by one. So here we have tried to explain. So if you have the manufacturer's responsibility, dealers, producers' responsibility, collection center, recycler, dismantler, disposer, refurbishers, consumer, bulk consumer, and the dealer's duty. So, everybody's duty has been listed there based on the e-waste management rules, and then how the things flows down the chain, like in terms of the e-waste flow or the payment, if any, how the payment move through, that has also been kind of presented over here. So, let us look at one by one. So, in terms of different stakeholders and then different type of responsibilities, and then we can summarize it at the end. So, let us for the first part, say if you talk about producer's responsibility, the waste which is being produced at the producer's place. So, producer has to collection and do the channelization, must follow the EPR, take back system, financing and organizing, affixing symbol for awareness. So, it is the producer who has to do these tasks as per the MS rules, MSW management, e-waste management rules 2016. So, that is in terms of like for the collector, and then the manufacturer's response, that was the consumer. The manufacturer is collection of e-waste, obtain the authorization, ensure there is no damage, maintain record and file annual return before every on June 30th. Then we have dealer's duty. Dealers have to collection of waste, apply for registration, follow standard guideline, ensure safe storage and no damage, file annual return before June 30th, maintain the record. So, that is their duty. Then you have the consumer, bulk consumer, like something like IIT will be a bulk consumer. So, channelizing of e-waste to collectors, dismantlers, recycler, bulk consumer must maintain records and file annual return, follow Atomic Energy Act. So, those things are also there. So, then we have the collection center, they have to follow the standard guideline, secured storage, dismantler, no damage, maintain record. So, this is again what this set of slides are there. It is as I said in the beginning as well, many times the rules start getting boring. So, we need to kind of put some story there to understand it better. So, as you can see, there are a lot of, for each and every stakeholders, at least from the 2016 municipal solid waste management rules, for each and every stakeholder we have some sort of responsibilities, and the responsibilities has been clearly defined. So, it is also to people to reduce the level of what should I say, like the level of confusion. What this rule does is try to get the different different stakeholders, try to explain them what are their responsibilities. So, manufacturer's responsibility, we looked at the dealers, we looked at the producers, collection centers, consumer and bulk consumer. Then further you have dismantler duties, as you can see for the dismantler. It is dismantler or refurbishers. First the refurbishers, collection of e-waste, apply for registration, follow standard, safe storage, no damage, file annual return. So, many of these sounds as if like a repetitive, and they are repetitive, but that is how the rules are, isn't it? The rules are many times repetitive, only few things will change. So, dismantler duties, follow standard guideline, apply for registration, safe storage, no damage, send to recycler, disposing unit, and then they also file annual tax return. So, like annual return, not tax return, annual return for that particular plant. So, and so those are there. Then recycler, they have to get the registration, SPCB, follow standard, ensure authorized safety, file annual returns. So, that is the responsibility of the recycler. Then finally, I think for the disposer, we have choose appropriate method in landfilling, incineration or reusing, etc., for safe and sustaining healthy environment. So, that this disposer is making a very strong, I would say a strong judgment in terms of how the waste is going to be managed. So, this person or whoever is working as a disposer needs a very good thorough understanding, thorough training of this electronic waste. It will be really nice if that person is actually taking a course like this, because they will get some idea about what are their rules, what are their responsibilities, what should they do, what are the environmental implications of those electronic waste. So, they choose the method which is landfilling, incineration, reusing, etc., for safe and sustaining healthy environment. So, that is how they get that the information, that is the disposer will get the information in that line. So, and these details for these rules are presented over here. So, if we can look at just have a quick little wrap up on these particular rules. As I said, any rule is the basic philosophy for any rule is to have a protection of environment, have a protection of a human health. And at the same time, if you think about e-waste rule or municipal solid waste rule, we are also trying to do some resource recovery, resource conservation, resource recovery. Now, what we are meaning by resource recovery? The rule is trying to promote recycling of e-waste. So, let's promote recycling of e-waste, try to use material, less harmful material, less hazardous material to make it a greener product, and at the same time those this is it has a greener, but whatever the waste is produced, that has to be also managed properly. That also has to be managed properly. So, for the management point of view, we have different stakeholders which is there. As you can see on this, we have several stakeholders. If you we saw that particular slide with all the stakeholders nicely listed over there. So, there are the responsibility for each of the stakeholders. There are certain responsibilities that they have to follow, and those I tried to capture on those small boxes that you saw. And then there is also a flow of material, how this waste material, e-waste material is flowing through, that is also there, and how to bring this e-waste back into the economy, as a how to do the resource recovery, moving from linear to a circular economy. So, those kind of things kind of goes into while we are trying to develop these kind of rules. Extended producer responsibility, removal of trying to remove that hazardous substances in those electronics. So, all these things kind of goes into making this e-waste management rule. And so, that is again in 2016, so slightly more than a year when this was implemented, the newer version. So, things are still in progress. We have to see how the rule can be further implemented in a nice way. There are some initiatives going on in terms of the capacity building and all, and this course is actually another attempt to have some more capacity in terms intellectual capacity in terms of the e-waste management. People should understand the basics and the details of what goes into when we are trying to have a e-waste management system. So, with that, let us wrap up this video. So, we will close this video now. You have in week 4, we are in week 4 like a first module. We have another 4 modules to go, then there will be some example problem ones. Again, you have been asking questions on discussion board. Please keep on doing that. Those of you who are not active, get active on discussion board. Ask questions. That's if you ask questions, we will try to answer that as soon as possible as well. And sometimes the questions are not clear, but still we try to either we'll go back to you and tell that, can you please clarify, or we try to interpret in our way and then say that this is what we thought you are asking, and here is the answer. So, if you have any questions, don't feel free to ask those questions through the discussion forum, and we have been giving you reply within 24 hours and will continue to do that. So, thank you, and again see you in the next video.